Hey everyone, and welcome to Tactical Inc., your portal to the magical realm of all things Lorcana. I'm Bradley, and today we will be reviewing the 5th and newest set of Lorcana, Shimmering Skies. We won't be covering every card today, however, over the next few weeks we will be breaking down every card for each color, so be on the lookout for those videos coming soon. So let's get started, and the first thing we'll look at is the new and improved mechanics. And while this set doesn't have any new keywords or card types, there's still a lot to go over. Starting off with a few cards here that lock down opponents. We have the newly introduced Brother Bear character, Coda, Talkative Cub. It's a 2-cost inkable card that prevents you from losing lore during your opponent's turns. Now, I don't think this is a card that is going to see any play. However, if this was released during the first chapter or Rise of the Floodborn, it probably would have seen play, just due to the fact there were many decks playing Aladdin Heroic Outlaw and Lady Tremaine Overbearing Matriarch, causing you to lose a little bit of lore. Next we have the Amethyst character, Magicka Dispel, Cruel Sorceress. This is one card we may see some people play, due to her effect blocking opponents from making you discard a card from your hand. And we see a lot of discard decks in Emerald Steel and Emerald Amber. And I don't know the full ruling on this, but it seems like to me it can make a great counter to even a whole new world. Now, I don't know if you get the 7 cards still if you're not discarding them when your opponent plays a whole new world, but I'm sure we'll find that out soon in the future. However, I believe this card would be better as a card that would be in a side deck, if we ever get side decks in the game, that is. It just dies to a lot of removal, including Ruby staples like Brawl and Sisu Empowered Sibling. Still, if you know your LGS has a lot of discard decks, then I would probably add it in. Another Amethyst character is Genie, the main attraction. He does cost 7 and is uninkable, which can be very expensive, but his ability to lock down exerted characters so they can't quest or challenge can be really devastating to an opponent. They could still ready to effects like LeFou Instigator, but if you can get Genie out and keep him alive, opponents will struggle to get anything going. However, he has to be exerted, so opponents may be able to see this coming a mile away, not challenge or questing until they have a way of killing him. I wish he had evasive or ward to help protect him, but then again, that may have made him too good. And very similar to Genie, we have King of Hearts, Monarch of Wonderland, in Amethyst. He costs 4 and can exert to have chosen character not ready at the beginning of its owner's turn. This could be interesting to put a character on lockdown, especially reckless characters like Maui Hero to All. You can also use this on cards like Hiram Flaversham so they can't ready to quest again, sacrificing an item and draw 2 cards. I do feel like he is a little slow, but could be interesting depending on the matchups. And our last card in Amethyst here is the location Elsa's Ice Palace, Place of Solitude. This location costs 3 and has a move cost of 1 with 4 willpower. And the cool thing about this location is you don't have to have a character at the location to activate its ability. Whenever this location enters play, you can exert a character, and that character cannot ready while this location is on the field. While this sounds good on paper, its weakness is its 4 willpower. This pretty much instantly dies once it's played, especially to something like Madame M. Fox. And next up, we have the Sapphire character, Belle of the Ball. She gives ward to your characters for a turn, which can really help protect them. She has ward herself, which means she is hard to remove as well. However, I think I would go with Aurora Dreaming Guardian here. She's just the better option, just because you can shift her out a little earlier, unlike Belle, and she also gives ward to all your characters, unlike Belle as well. Next, we have the legendary card of Steel in Jafar Tyrannical Hypnotist. His effect can really block aggro rush decks, preventing cards like Madame M. Fox and Stitch Little Rocket from challenging, and keeps Shere Khan's ability in check with low rush characters. He does not work well against Maui Hero to All, but his 7 willpower is great to stay alive against him. However, his 0 strength is his biggest weakness, because he easily dies to Brawl, a staple in Ruby. Brawl wipes out over 50% of the characters in this set. We'll stay in Steel with our next card being Pete, Games Referee. This character blocks opponents from using actions for a turn, which could be really helpful when you got a huge board playing against Ruby to prevent a Be Prepared from wrecking your board. You can also pair it with bounce effects such as Madame M. Fox or even Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo to reuse his effect and block your opponents from using actions. Really great against Steel Song, blocking them from singing. Great against Ruby from using Brawl and Dragonfire, and even against Sapphire with one jump ahead and let it go. I'm very interested to see how much this card will be used. And the final card of our lockdown effects is the Still card, When Will My Life Begin? This is an action song that keeps a character from challenging during its owner's next turn. Now, I'm not 100% sure how useful this will be for every deck, especially since some decks, like item decks, hardly ever challenge. But it can be very useful to play on characters like Scar Vicious Cheater, or even Goofy Super Goof, and Robin Hood Champion of Sherwood, to prevent them from messing with your characters and gaining lore at the same time. This could be a good spot for Still Song with Cinderella Ballroom Sensation to help protect your aggro characters, but time will tell if this will be of any use. The next mechanic we'll look at is playing cards for free. And the first up is one of my favorites of the set, and probably a lot of other people's as well, Prince Naveen, Ukulele Player. Being able to throw down a character on turn 4 and play a song like A Whole New World, Grab Your Swords, and Then Along Came Zeus, or even Be King Disputed is really great. Not only that, after he is in play, he also has Singer 6, so he can sing a song for free of 6 or less, or be used to quest with 2 lore the very next turn. I know a lot of people are thinking Mufasa with the combo of Revive, but heck, I'm thinking Revive with Prince Naveen to play songs for free. He is definitely going to be a card that you're going to see played, and it possibly can make Still Song jump up in the meta once again. Next is our Ruby card, Robin Hood Sharpshooter, that also plays cards for free. Whenever Robin Hood quests, you can play an action with a cost of 6 or less for free from the top 4 cards of your deck. Now, unlike Prince Naveen, Robin Hood isn't limited to only songs, but he can also play any action like Revive or Dragonfire for free. However, you do have to wait a turn to quest with him, which could be problematic since he only has 1 strength and dies to Brawl and Sisu Empowered Sibling. I just wish there'd be something, maybe a location that allows characters there to quest their first turn, because if something like that ever releases, you may see more of characters that can't activate their abilities until they quest being played. Next is Kronk, Head of Security. He is our next card that can play cards for free. His effect allows him to play a character of 5 or less for free when he banishes another character. And he has the stats of 6 strength and 6 willpower to get that job done. And he can be shifted out to challenge the first turn he has played. Some options that his ability would really work for would be Maui Hero to All, Cusco Temperamental Emperor, Belle Strange but Special, Mufasa Betrayed Leader, and so much more. I do wonder how well this will work with much of the meta being earlier in the game right now. However, playing cards for free is never a bad thing. Next we go to Prince John, Gold Lover, and Sapphire. Prince John can play an item with a cost of 5 or less for free from your hand or your discard when you activate him. The negative with this, for me, is activated abilities are pretty slow. I would just feel terrible to play this character and it get banished before you get any value out of him. Next up, we get characters whose cost gets reduced if you meet certain conditions, which reminds me a little bit of Chernobog, Evil Doer. We got 1 character for each color, and first off is Amber's Kristoff, Reindeer Keeper. And this sounds great for Still Song and cards like A Whole New World, which load your discard up, and you can play Kristoff for cheaper. However, I really don't think you're going to get Kristoff out, say, turn 3, 4, or even 5, which means he is a late game character. However, if you're playing a game with 3 or more players, you could possibly get him into the later game playing for a cheap cost and threatening with a lot of lore. Next is Amethyst's own Olaf, Happy Passenger. Olaf costs 9 and gets cheaper for every exerted character your opponents control. This is another character that will be coming out late unless you're looking at playing a game of 3 or more. However, with 1v1, I don't really see this cost getting under 5 until later in the game, and it's harder for you to control exerting your opponent's characters and at the same time paying the cost for this character as well. The next card is Emerald's Robin Hood Timely Contestant. This one is one of the favorites of mine that gets cheaper for every damage on opponent's characters and also has Ward to help him keep alive. Playing this after you play Avalanche, Grab Your Swords, or Tinkerbell could possibly make him cost very little to nothing. Moving on to Ruby's version, we have another favorite of mine, which is Gaston Pure Paragon. He's the opposite of Robin Hood, becoming cheaper for every damage character that you have. This finally may be a reason to play Mulan Injured Soldier and Beast Wounded, Let's throw in Flynn Rider, Frenemy, and Maximus, Team Champion, to gain lore like crazy. Now Sapphire's version is Sheriff of Nottingham, Bushel Britches, that becomes cheaper for each item you have in play. Now while I believe item decks could consistently lower his costs 3 or 4 pretty easily, I don't think he is worth the addition into an item deck. Yes, he has 4 lore, but I would focus your deck slots on either ramping or have actual item support like Hiram Flaverson, which is key to the deck. And the final card of this category is Namari, Resolute Daughter. She costs 2 less for each character your opponent controls that was banished in a challenge this turn. This is another one that I just don't think is going to be consistent enough to be an addition into your deck. Now to the next category, it only has 1 card, but it's the first card ever to have 5 lore printed on it, and that's Mirabelle, Madrigal, Family Gatherer. While we do have characters like Belle, Strange but Special, and Ariel, Treasure Collector that can get 5 lore, Mirabelle already has the 5 lore printed on it. Now as far as playability, this character is going to be hard to play. Even in aggro decks, it can be hard to have 5 characters in play to actually play Mirabelle. But still, it's cool that we finally get a 5 lore character. Next mechanic we have tutors, and we have 2 of them. The first being Minnie Mouse Drum Major. While you have to shift her out to look through your deck and find a card to place it on top of your deck, it could still be very interesting. But what I believe is the better tutor is Merlin, Intellectual Visionary. Yes, you must still shift out to get his effect. However, instead of placing the card on top of your deck, it goes into your hand. This can be so helpful to finding an answer to the board state, or even trying to find your combo piece like Lucky Dime or Tamatoa. And there are a lot of Merlins in the game already, so it should be pretty consistent to shift them out, especially if you play an Amethyst Sapphire deck. You could even make it an item theme to have Lucky Dime and Magicka Dispel combo, which sounds really fun. Next mechanic we have Graveyard Recursion, and it's in Amber. And we'll start off with Revive. While it only works for 5 cost or less character, we have Mufasa and Prince Naveen who would both love this. Then we also got Pridelands, Jungle Oasis. This location allows you to banish it and play a character from your discard for free as long as you have 3 or more characters at that location. Power sounds great, but the move cost of 2 just seems really hard to pull off. In the next mechanic, we have Gaining Lore outside of questing. And we're going to start with the Queen Sensor Cord. While its activated ability can help find the character you need, gaining free lore if you have a princess or queen sounds good too. And since Stillsong is already running about 20 queens and princesses, I think it would be a great addition. But Stillsong may be getting another Amber card to add to the deck, with the character Alan Adele, gaining you 1 lore each time you play a song. Unlike Sleepy's Flute, that only activates once. If you play more than 1 song in a turn, Alan Adele activates every time a song is played. Then we have Wreck-It Ralph, Admiral Underpants. He costs 7 and is specific to princesses to get you that 2 lore. I just think there's better lower cost options to play over him. Then we have the Amethyst Camilo Madrigal Family Copycat. When he quests, you gain lore equal to the lore printed on a chosen character of yours, and bounce that character to your hand. I like this card if you can keep it alive for the first turn. About having Pinocchio Star Attraction quest for 3, Camilo quest for 1, and then gain 3 more and bounce Pinocchio to your hand to protect him, it just sounds really great. However, coming into play on turn 6 and having to wait a whole turn, maybe just be a little slow. Next we get to Emerald with Robin Hood Archery Contestant. He gains you lore when you play him while an opponent has a damaged character. One thing I don't like about the design of this card is most of the time on turn 2, characters won't have damage yet. So really, you don't even want to play him early in the game, or he will just be a vanilla 2-2 with 1 lore. Moving on to Ruby, we have Maximus, Team Champion. I'm a huge fan of this card, because he gains you 2 lore if you have a character of 5 strength or more at the end of your turn. But if you have a character of 10 strength or more, you gain 5 lore instead. So we got Goofy Knight for a day, and Gaston Pure Paragon with 10 strength. That can really help Maximus give that 5 lore. And I love this character because your opponent can't do anything to stop it, because it's at the end of your turn. And as of right now, opponents cannot play cards during opponents' turns. And you can use this with support, like Alice Growing Girl, to help assure you have a character with 10 strength or more. Staying in Ruby, we have the action, Who's With Me? An action that gives 2 strength to all your characters and gives you 2 lore for each reckless character that challenges this turn. I went with the Reckless theme with the Ruby Sapphire into the Inkland starter deck, Plenty of Pluck. And this is a card that I think would work great in a deck like that and really spice up the power. It is very niche, but I'm sure it could be a lot of fun. Then we have another Ruby card with the item, the Sword Released. This card makes opponents lose 1 lore if you control a character with a higher strength than they do. Then you gain lore equal to the amount of lore lost. I like this card a lot if you're running high strength characters like the new Gaston, and it's very useful in games with 3 or more players to gain you even more lore. And finally, we have the Sapphire character, Pacha, Emperor's Guide, who at the beginning of your turn gains you 1 lore if you control an item and 1 lore if you control a location. This could be a very interesting card, but I'm just not 100% sure what you're going to kick out of an item deck right now. The next category we have is Damage Matters, and we only have 1 card to really mention, and that is Robin Hood Sneaky Sleuth. Robin Hood gains 1 lore for each opposing damage character in play, and you're probably looking at a best of 3 or 4 characters that are damaged that make you have 4 or 5 lore, but the thing is, can you really get that consistently? And I want to see him played in a 4-player game though, where you can really get up to like 10 lore. Next up, we're having a category I'm calling the Multiverse, or effects that just get stronger if you have multiples of the character with the same name. And we start off in Amethyst with Maleficent Fearsome Queen. Maleficent returns a card with a cost of 3 or less to its owner's hand for each other Maleficent you control. And since you want to shift her out, your best case scenario right now is probably to bounce about 2 or 3 characters at max. There are pretty decent Maleficent cards out there, but I just don't think she is consistent enough. And it's just such a shame with such a sick artwork. Next, we have the Ruby character, Pete, Steamboat Rival. When you play him, if you control another Pete, you can banish a character. So it's the cheaper Maleficent Dragon, only if you control another Pete, that is. Maybe if we get another Petes that are decent enough to make a Pete deck, this will actually be good. And speaking of Pete, we have Pete Wrestling Champ, another card that would go great in a Pete deck. You can activate him to reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's a card named Pete, you can play it for free. So just like the Pete before, let's get enough Petes to really make these cards worth it. And I'm going to stop saying Pete now. Next, we go to Sapphire with the Queen, fairest of them all. She gains 1 lore for each other queen you have in play. If you use her shift ability, you're losing one of your queens right there. And right now, there isn't too many of the queen that are actually decent enough to run this card. And one of those that I don't think is that decent is the Queen, Head of the Council. When you play her, you may look at the top 3 cards of your deck and put any cards named the Queen in your hand. I wish this would activate when she quests too, since she has Ward and is harder to remove, but it's only an enter the battlefield effect. Right now, I just don't think there's enough cards to get this one going. And finally, we have the Still location, Bad Anon, which costs 3, has a move cost of 2, and gives characters the activated ability of paying 3 to play a character from your hand with the same name as a villain at this location. So essentially, without any ink reduction or playing things for free, you're paying 8 ink to get this card to work. And to me, that's way too expensive. The next category we're getting to is Rush, and cards that deal with Rush. And first is the Amethyst character, Cogsworth and Luminary Watchman. I like this card a lot. Not only can you basically pay 1 to give a character Rush and have a character with 1/1 body with 1 lore to help, he can also give Rush to himself to remove an early aggro threat such as Simba Scrappy Cub or Maleficent Biding Her Time. Be on the lookout for this card. I may be wrong, but I think he's going to see play. And the other card here is Ruby's Vanellope Von Schweetz, Random Roster Racer. She can just be an invasive destroyer. One card that many people are thinking about playing her against is Diablo, the Devoted Herald. However, she can also remove other evasive threats, such as Minnie Mouse Stylish Surfer and Ray Easygoing Firefly. And since we're on the topic of evasive, let's move on to that category. Starting off with the Amethyst, Archimedes Expirated Owl, a 2/2 with 2 lore and evasive. He's very similar to Minnie Mouse Surfer, but trades 1 willpower for 1 strength. And we also have his Floodborn half in Archimedes Electrified Owl. He still has evasive, but can be shifted out on turn 3. He also has Challenger +3, which gives him 4/4 while he challenges. Next in Amethyst, we got Bruni, Fire Salamander, a 4-cost 2/2 character that has evasive and 2 lore, which is the same as Archimedes, but just costs 1 more. However, Bruni has the ability added on that says whenever he is banished to draw a card. I don't think this is a terrible card, but the 4-card slot is already pretty decent in Amethyst with Merlin Goat, Merlin Rabbit, and the Queen's Castle, and that's just an Amethyst. I just don't see these cards being replaced for this character. And the next card is Elsa, the 5th Spirit. Elsa seems like an evasive killer that costs 5, 2 strength, 5 willpower with 1 lore. She has rush and evasive and exerts the character when she enters play. I don't think she's going to be seeing play because her strength is just a little lacking. This is coming from a player who has an aggro deck and uses Goofy Super Goof with rush and 2 strength. Because probably a good 30 to 40% of the time he can't banish a character, but I like him just for gaining 2 lore. And Elsa feels the same to me. I just don't think she's going to take out so many things. However, you can use items like Ruby Chromicon that gives her +1 strength. She can also wipe out the terrible Diablo Devoted Herald, but I just don't want to really play her on turn 5 to wipe out something that's already devastated the game early on. I think I'd rather run Vanellope Von Schweetz. Now, her effect to exhaust a character could be interesting, but again, 5 ink just seems like a lot. And the last evasive character is Ruby's Ratigan Party Crasher. This evasive character is a 5/5 with 3 lore and has shift 4 and evasive. He also gives 2 strength to all your damaged characters. I think this card is only playable if you shift him out on turn 4. Having that 3 lore that early with those beefy stats and evasive is great because he has the same stats as Mickey Mouse Brave Little Tailor, but he just costs 1 less with 1 lore less and has a possibility to come out 4 turns earlier. But it's that possibility that's a little hard right now because the other Ratigan characters are a little lackluster for the most part. But just keep an eye on this card, because if we get something better in the Ratigan family, you could see this card possibly being played. Next up, we have abilities like Elsa that exerts opposing characters, and we will look at Amethyst with Ana Mystical Majesty. Ana exerts all your opponent's characters, which means you can challenge them with other characters right away. She does cost 7, but she can be played for only 4 ink if you shift her. While 1v1, I don't think she's going to see much play, she could have an impact with 3 or more people, exerting everyone's characters, meaning not only you can challenge opponents' characters, but some of your opponents can challenge them as well. And our last exerting character is another Ana, Eager Acolyte. I don't think this card is going to see much play because I just really don't think it has that much advantage. And I think Pinocchio Taco the Puppet is 10 times out of 10 better than this card. The next mechanic we're going to talk about is removal. And we have a few of these options, starting off with Emerald's very own song, You're Welcome. This song costs 4, but singing it for free is the way to go. It shuffles a character, item, or location into its owner's deck, and that owner draws 2 cards. People have been looking for a way to remove items, locations, and characters all at the same time, and this is one of those cards that can do that. And people were playing Yzma as a way of removal and giving opponents 2 cards in their hand back in Rise of the Floodborn. Now we have it in song form, and it can be played for free. So be on the lookout for it. And we'll stay in Emerald for our next card. That's the character Ana Diplomatic Queen. This is a character that costs 3 and is uninkable, with 2 strength and 3 willpower with 2 lore. She has the ability that allows you to pay 2 more ink when you play her, to give you 3 different options to choose from. The first option is each opponent discards a card. The second option is chosen character gets +2 strength. And the third option is banish chosen damaged character. I like how she has options. The only thing keeping me really from running this card is the uninkable part, just because Emerald has a lot of good uninkable cards. Perhaps this may find a spot in the Damage Matter deck though. Next up is the Sapphire Action Hideaway. It costs 2 and can put an item or location into its owner's inkwell. We have cards like Judy Hopps and Poor Unfortunate Soul to remove cards like this, but now we got even more with this. And you can also use this as a way of ramp by putting your own item or location into your inkwell. Next up is another Sapphire card, being Cusco Selfish Emperor, which his first ability is the exact same as Hideaway. However, he costs 6 with 3 strength, 5 willpower, and 2 lore. His second ability can give resist +1 by paying 4 ink, and it is stackable by the way. But you're only going to probably stack it around 2 or 3 times in a game just because you're not going to get really over that amount of ink. It could be usable in decks that doesn't use steel, so you can remove pesky items and locations. Another card that could be used for removal would be the steel character Arthur King Victorious. He is very similar to Cinderella Stouthearted, but I would have to say that Cinderella would be the better option here. He can boost another character you control, which Cinderella can't do, but his ability only activates once, while Cinderella has resist that is static, and she can continuously challenge ready characters when you play a song. And the final card we'll look at in this category is the steel card Food Fight. It only costs 1 and can let all your characters become a Robin Hood capable fighter, pinging opponents' characters for 1 damage as they exert. This is definitely for decks that like to swarm board with characters, and it can be interesting to see. However, it is uninkable, and that kills it for me since you can't use it if you control no characters. And next up, we're going to talk about the discard mechanic. And this mechanic really slowed down this set. However, there is an item that came into play which is going to be a force to be reckoned with, and that is Prince John's Mirror. It costs 3, but can be reduced by 1 if you control Prince John. This card makes opponents have a maximum hand size of 3, which means opponents can be discarding a lot of cards. And it's a good thing we're getting all these item removal cards this set in different colors, because I think we're really going to need it. And the next mechanic is Bounce, and we will start with Mother Gothel Unwavering Schemer. Letting your opponent choose a character to return to their hand can be really bad, especially if it has an inter-battlefield effect. However, in games with more than 2 people, this actually returns multiple cards by saying each of your opponents. It's just sad right now that there's really only one playable shift option for her. And the final bounce card we'll talk about is Emerald's item, Emerald Chromicon. So whenever a character you control is banished during your opponent's turns, you may bounce a character to its owner's hand. This card may be a little slow, I'm not really sure, but this could just slow down opponents and maybe not even want them to challenge. And since Emerald has characters with tons of lore, this could be really good for you. I really want to try it with some cards like Lyle Tiberius Rourke to make sure your opponent has no choice to challenge. The next mechanic we'll talk about is Ramp, and it's interesting how almost every other set in Sapphire focuses on either items or ramp. Now Shimmering Skies is going back to ramp. And one Sapphire character who activates when you play extra cards into your inkwell is Chica, Dedicated Mother. She allows you to draw a card each time you can ink in a turn. She costs 2, but she is uninkable, meaning you're going to have to replace other cards in your deck, probably to play her, and I don't know what you're going to kick out right now. Our next ramp card really isn't ramp, but it can get you ahead with your ink, and that card is Sapphire's Mufasa, Ruler of the Pride Lands. So when you play Mufasa, you must return 2 cards at random from your ink into your hand, which at first sounds really bad, but his second ability makes up for it. It says whenever he quests, ready all the cards in your inkwell. So let's get the negatives out of the way first, then we can talk about the positive. So first, he costs 8 and is uninkable, so he can be a dead card in your hand at times. Luckily, you have cards like Fishbone Quill that can put him into your ink pile if needed earlier in the game, when you don't need him. Second, you return ink to your hand. So let's say you have 8 ink when you play him. His ability will make you return 2 cards and only have 6 in your ink. And third, his second ability only activates when he quests, so you have to keep him alive for a turn, because if you don't, you just wasted so much ink to play him and it actually hurts you. But the positive here. There's only one other character in Sapphire that has 4 lore, besides having an ability to give them more lore like Bellstrange but Special or Tamatoa. His stats also keep him from getting hit from some of the big removals, such as And Then Along Came Zeus, Brawl, Madame Medusa, Maui Hero to All, and Sisu Empowered Sibling. I believe the power of this card could really pop off, however, it remains to be seen if you can really make it viable and consistent enough to be competitive. Next is the Sapphire character Donald Duck Focus Flatfoot, and it says when you play this character, you can put the top card of your deck into your ink zone. I believe we won't be seeing this card just because he costs 5. You really want most of your ramp to be lower cost to help benefit getting your higher characters out quicker. Next is Tipo Growing Sun, a 2-cost Sapphire character that when you play, adds a card from your hand to your inkwell. Sapphire has a lot of decent draw now with Popsicle, Maurice's Workshop, Hiram Flaversham, and more to make a card like this not eat away at your hand so often. You can pair this with Madame M Snake or Madame M Fox to bounce him and replay him to even gain more ink. And the final ramp card we'll mention is I'm Not Having Fun Anymore. This is a Sapphire action that places a character you control into your ink. This can be great for cards like we just talked about, Tipo Growing Sun, after he's already used his ability. After they enter the battlefield, their ability's already been used, so why not play a card like this and send it to your inkwell for even more ramp. Next, we'll start off with the draw category, with Sapphire cards like King Candy Sweet Abomination. He costs 5 and is a 3/3 with 2 lore. He has Shift 3 with the ability whenever you play this character, draw 2 cards, then put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck. This one could be interesting, especially if you shift him out. However, I'm not sure what you replace him right now with, since most Sapphire is running items, and items seems to be loaded right now with Draw and Popsicle and Hiram Flaversham. But maybe if you're going more for a ramp approach without the items, he can maybe be a great draw engine. Next up is Sapphire Action Vision of the Future. This action costs 2 and allows you to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and put 1 into your hand and the rest on the bottom. So this card is a card that costs 1 more than Develop Your Brain, but allows you to look at the top 5 cards instead of the top 2. There are still item decks that use Develop Your Brain, so it will be interesting if people will swap the cards out or not. Next is Clarabelle, Light on Her Hooves. She is a 5/6 that costs 7 and is inkable, but has Shift 5. Her ability says that if an opponent has more cards in hand than you, you draw cards until you have the same amount. Emerald's main focus right now is discarding cards from an opponent's hand. And that tells me that most of the time you're not going to want to have this card in your deck. It just seems expensive for what it does. Next up is the Amethyst Action, Finders Keepers. It costs 5 and says draw 3 cards. I don't believe this card is going to see play either. It's just too expensive. I'd rather play Friends on the Other Side and draw 2 cards by singing it for free. And the last card we're going to talk about is the Amethyst Location, the Library. This is a location that costs 3, has a move cost of 1, and a willpower of 8 with 1 lore. It says whenever a character is banished here, draw a card. I love the higher willpower of this location, and playing turn 3 can make an opponent reconsider their game plan and go more offensive rather than try to gain lore. Place characters like Mr. Smee and Mulan Injured Soldier here, characters you know that are going to get banished, and draw those cards. The next category is Top Deck Manipulation, starting off with the Sapphire location, Merlin's Cottage, Wizard's Hall. This is an inkable Sapphire location that costs 1 with a move cost of 1 and a willpower of 7 with 0 lore. And it says each player plays with the top card of their deck revealed. This means that cards like Bruno Undetected Uncle, Mulan Reflecting, and Sorcerer's Hat actually have a really good friend here. I'm not sure if there's enough cards out there really to build a top deck manipulation deck for the meta, but this card may be something that can steer it in the right direction. But one thing to note, opponents may not even want to remove this card. Even though the top card of their deck has been revealed to you, they can also see yours. And it has no lore, so they may not see it as a threat. But if you're running cards like Bruno and Undetected Uncle, you can guess correctly the correct card every time and gain a bunch of lore. The next card is Merlin Turtle, a 3/3 4-cost inkable character with 2 lore that lets you look at the top 2 cards of your deck and place 1 on top and 1 on the bottom when he enters play and when he leaves play. He basically is a bigger Merlin Squirrel. Because of all the 4-drops already in Amethyst like Queen's Castle, Merlin Rabbit, and Merlin Goat, I really don't see him seeing any play. Though a Merlin deck with Merlin Intellectual Visionary would probably like to have as many Merlins as possible to get his tutor effect off. Next, we'll stay in Amethyst with We Know the Way. This is a song that costs 3 and is inkable, that shuffles 1 card from your discard into your deck. Then you reveal the top card of your deck, and if it has the same name as the card from the discard, you put it into play for free. Not many decks can use this with consistency. However, there are a few to mention here that possibly could. Magical Brooms, Dalmatian Puppy, and Merlin are all pretty good examples, but it's really niche and probably won't see play for now. And the final card of the top deck manipulation is Sapphire item, Basil's Magnifying Glass. It costs 2 and is inkable, with the ability to activate and pay 2 ink. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck. Reveal an item and put it into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom in any order. I really think this is just too expensive. Pay 2 to play, pay 2 to activate, so you're paying 4 ink to look at the top 3 and maybe get an item. I would recommend running Scuttle Expert on Humans and, or even both, the Queen Diviner. Now that we've talked about most of the mechanics this set focuses on, we'll move on to what I think will be the best 3 cards for each color. And the first color is Amber. Prince Naveen is probably my favorite card of the set, and one that I believe will make the case for Steel Song to possibly shine once again. Revive is a card that I believe would work great for Prince Naveen, and the king himself, Mufasa Betrayed Leader. And the last card, Daisy Duck, Donald's Date. She's going to be a card you're going to see in aggro decks. Even though it lets opponents possibly get a card into their hand, this card is so hard to remove early in the game, and it's worth it in the end. Moving on to Amethyst, we have Cogsworth, Illuminary Watchman. This isn't a card you're going to see in every deck per se, but I think he's going to add a detail in the decks that are needed, and adding rush to characters that desperately need it. The library is a location that comes out a turn earlier than the Queen's Castle, and I think it may even work better with these aggro rush decks because of that. And finally, we have Amethyst Chromicon, an item that lets you and your opponent draw a card. This is another card that I see being able to help you on your turns, drawing 2 cards early in the game, even if your opponent draws 1. Now we get to Emerald, and we have You're Welcome. It's the only card in the game for now that can remove anything. Yes, you have to pay a cost, but it also can remove something you don't need to draw you 2 cards. If you sing this card, that would be the route to go. Next is Prince John's Mirror, which is another card I just believe is going to be a pain to play against. Get ready to run all your item removals. And the last Emerald card is the item Emerald Chromacon. This one could be interesting, bouncing upon your opponent's hand when your characters are banished. We'd love to see some interesting builds with this and giving characters reckless. Next up is Ruby. We have Maximus Team Champion, a character who could breathe new life into the support mechanic. We have Gaston Pure Paragon, a card that would work really well with Maximus, and make cards like Mulan Injured Soldier and Beast Wounded actually be playable. And we have the location Sugar Rush Speedway. This may not see immediate impact, but could impact even more in the future by moving your characters to another location for free. Then moving to Sapphire, we have Hideaway, a card that can act as a removal or a ramp. Chica, who draws you cards as you ramp, and Tipo, a character who helps you ramp. And finally we get to Steel, who I believe got the short end of the stick this set, sadly. But the top 3 in my opinion would be Peak Games Referee to help shut off a lot of removal and songs for 1 turn. Then, When Will My Life Begin to help not only shut down character cards such as Robin Hood, Champion of Sherwood, or Maui Hero to All for 1 turn, but also give you card draw. And finally, we have Doc, Bold Knight. This is a risky ability to play, but late game when you're desperate and looking for answers, this is a very cheap option to help you dig. He can also increase the power of the Sheriff of Nottingham to deal extra damage. And now it's time to give Shimmering Skies a grade, and the grade I'm going to go with is a C. First, I'll say that this is probably some of the best artwork of any set previously, and I can't wait to collect this set because of that. But gameplay wise, there's not really much going on, and I don't think it's really going to impact the game as much right now. We're going to see probably maybe 25 to 35 cards of the 200 be playable, and 35 to 40 is really stretching at the end there. However, Amber did get much needed love as well as Sapphire, with Ruby and Emerald behind them. Amethyst didn't really need as much love, so I'm glad there wasn't as many playable cards, and then Steel got the least. But other reasons for the grade is that each set there has been something new introduced. Resist, locations, sing together, team up like Flotsam and Jetsam, which this set just missed a big opportunity on, with Olaf having Marshmallow in the art. But there was just nothing new mechanically besides the cards that become cheaper that cost 9. But all in all, no matter the grade, I'm always excited to get my hands on the newest set and try to collect all I can. And with that, that's all for today. So what do you think about Shimmering Skies, and what are your favorite cards from the set? Leave a comment below. And be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to keep up with the latest Tactical Ink news. And I'll see you here next week.